and welcome to Four Directions Yoga Studio introduction to our classes on yoga and meditation for anxiety and depression. My name is Paula DiPaolo, and in this short video I'm just going to give a little introduction. We'll try a couple of techniques to help us cope with or integrate or learn from our anxiety and depression. First of all, I should say that if you feel that you need medical help, this is not going to replace medical help. If you need the assistance of medical professionals, then please seek that out. This is only a few yoga and meditation practices that might be helpful for some people when we experience anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression, in my experience, are natural human responses to life. Life has its challenges that can sometimes be overwhelming. And when our nervous system, in my experience, gets overwhelmed, it can seem to crash into anxiety and depression. So anxiety and depression, I think, are the body-mind's way of telling us that something is really wrong. It's our body-mind saying, hey, person, please look after us. Please look after yourself. This isn't helpful. This is not right. So it's our way of defending ourselves, and it's our body-mind's way of protecting ourselves. The problem is, anxiety and depression can become overwhelming. There are three approaches to relating to anxiety and depression, at least. One way is to repress them and to soldier on in life and continue with the work, family responsibilities, whatever else is we do. And that's not my way. And what happens in my experience when we do that is the anxiety and depression just goes deeper, and it needs to knock on our door even more loudly for us to pay attention. And then we can be in even a bigger crisis. Another way of dealing with anxiety and depression is to allow them to rule us. So the anxiety and depression will dictate when we go out, if we get up out of bed, who we relate to, how we relate to them, and unfortunately, it's usually, we're unable to relate to people because we can get so caught up in our own need for help that we can't relate to other people as equals, as needing help themselves perhaps. So that's not a good idea either. To me, that's not a good way to deal with it, i.e. letting the anxiety and depression rule us. So the other way is a way of mindfulness. And that's the way that I try to explore anxiety and depression when I experience them. I've have experienced anxiety and depression when I was a young teenager. And my solution was to go to a silent retreat. Although people around me wanted me to get rid of the anxiety and depression and battle it, I didn't like those metaphors because I felt that the anxiety and depression had something to teach me and that I needed to learn from it. And I think that silent retreat started me on a path and saved my life. I realized the anxiety and depression had something to say. I'm going to read a passage from Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Fear, Essential Wisdom for Getting Through the Storm. And this really, philosophy is very much something that I find resonates with me. The chapter is called Calm in the Storm. Every time we feel a strong wave of fear, anger, or jealousy, we can do something to care for this negative energy so it does not destroy us. There does not need to be any conflict between one element and another element of our being. There should only be an effort of taking care and being able to transform. We need to have a non-violent attitude toward our suffering, our pain, our fear. When we have a strong emotion like fear or despair, it can be overwhelming. But with practice, we know we can learn how to embrace our fear, because we know that in each one of us there is a seed of mindfulness. If we practice touching that seed every day, while walking, sitting, breathing and smiling or eating, we cultivate that energy of mindfulness. And then anytime we need that energy, we just touch that seed, and right away the energy of mindfulness will come up, and we can use it to embrace our emotions. If we succeed just once in doing so, we will have a little more peace and will be less afraid of that strong emotion the next time it comes up. So we're practicing, and this is a lifelong experience. There's a lot of wonderful things we can learn from cultivating mindfulness with anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression happens often when we're highly sensitive people. So if we learn to integrate those energies mindfully, we can still be very sensitive and see the beauty of sun on the leaves in the fall, but without being overwhelmed by anxiety, without being shut down and turned in by anxiety and depression. So we'll start, and these practices that we're going to do are simple techniques that take us from the fight or flight response of anxiety to the relaxation response of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, parasympathetic nervous system is relaxation. And that's where we can be creative and calm and released. So one of the ways we're going to start in this little demonstration video, I should introduce Betty. This is Yogi Betty. She's been in some of the other YouTube videos, and she snores sometimes, and once in a while she'll get up and walk around and she'll leave the camera. So Betty is a very good model of relaxation. Anyway, so what you need to have is, I'll just go sideways off my yoga mat so you can see what I'm doing. But we're going to lie down on the floor on the back. And you need a cushion under your head. And you bring your feet to the floor, feet about hip width apart, and bring your hands onto your belly or abdomen. And then, well, actually before you bring your hands onto your belly, abdomen, take your skull and bring your hands behind your skull and draw your neck back gently, and then lay it down. Because even though you have a pillow under your head can still be tilted in the fight or flight posture. So what we're talking about in this video is, and in these Zoom classes, is getting out of that fight or flight habit pattern of posture, which is with the head up. So we want to drop the head, allow the chin to release, but soften the throat. And then we bring the hands onto the belly and abdomen, and start to breathe into your hands. Inhaling into the belly, and exhaling and feeling the breath drop away from your hands. Inhale. So I'm going to sit up again, but you continue to do that exercise. You can continue to do that exercise of breathing into your hands. And I would suggest you do it lying down so that there's no effort involved in sitting. As I mentioned when I was lying down, anxiety has a habit pattern. If we've had anxiety long enough and it has kind of ruled us, or we've repressed it, it manifests in a habit pattern in the body. One of the habit patterns is head up. That's a fight or flight reaction. And the other one is shallow breathing. That doesn't mean that everybody who has their head tilted up and or shallow breathing has anxiety, but I have noticed in my experience of teaching yoga for almost 30 years that when we have anxiety, we tend to breathe in the chest only, and our heads and neck tend to be very tight. So line on the floor with the hands on the belly and abdomen. Support under the head. Ensure that your neck softens at the throat and the back of the neck is long. And hands on the belly and abdomen, and inhale into the belly and exhale and draw the belly back. Inhale deeply into the belly and exhale and draw the belly back. And try that for several breaths. One of the other aspects of this technique that I'm talking about, is being in the body. When we have anxiety and depression, we are in our heads a lot, and we are not in the physical body. It can be scary for some people, particularly if they've experienced trauma in the past, distant past, or recent past, to be in the body. And sometimes we may need support from a professional to be there to get into the body again. Yoga can help us be in the body by giving us these simple yoga stretches to do and these breathing practices. So when we experience anxiety and depression, we can go into our heads and out of the body. We need to get back into the body. So breathing deeply into the hands, into the belly, into the abdomen. As you inhale, the belly should come forward. As you exhale, the belly should go back. How long to do this for? Be in your body, and your body will tell you when to get up. Your body will tell you when it's time to stop. You can close your eyes or have them slightly open. And take a few more breaths. If your belly does not come forward when you inhale and does not go back when you exhale, that is something you need to practice. Because it's natural for the body to come forward when we inhale. The diaphragm comes down, the belly comes out to allow the diaphragm to come down. As we exhale, the belly goes back and it supports the movement of the diaphragm coming up as we exhale. That is a very natural way of breathing, and it also massages the vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's a very important breathing technique. So please take the time and learn that technique. The reason the feet are on the floor with the knees bent is our spines are longer when our feet are on the floor and our knees are bent. All this breathing can happen more naturally and more fully. So that's the start. Another practice that we can do for anxiety is, as I was talking about, the habit pattern of anxiety is kind of a tight neck and a high neck. So neck rolls, forward, not backwards, just forward from side to side. Taking the time, so if you're still lying down, you can do this as you're lying down on that with your head supported on the cushion. So let your head drop and roll from side to side. If you come up to sitting, you can use gravity to help release your neck. As you roll the neck to the side, see if you can let your right ear come towards your right shoulder. Exhale and come back to the center, and then take your left ear towards your left shoulder. A lot of the time with habit pattern for anxiety, people can't do this neck lateral bending of their neck because the muscles at the back of the neck are so tight, we might end up doing this. This is why the Zoom class will be important, because I can give you feedback. The lateral bending for the neck is part of another exercise that we're going to do in the classes. And it is also related to the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's a very important thing to be able to do, to laterally bend the neck, because that releases the space at the top of the neck, bottom of the head, where the cranial nerves and vagus nerve goes into the head. And that's part of what we're going to cover in class. And one last thing before we go is we're going to come into kneeling on the hands and knees. If you're lying down on the floor and you still want to stay there and do that breathing, do that. And we're going to drop the head in cat pose and round up. So we're going to inhale and come into a neutral posture and exhale and round up. We're not lifting the head here. We're just going to keep the head dropping because we're trying to get away from anxiety, habit patterns of tight neck and lifting the head. The other thing this does is when we exhale and draw the belly back, we're exaggerating that movement I talked about when you're lying on the floor, breathing into your hands. So that's our introduction to these Zoom classes on Tuesday evenings. I will finalize the time and the start dates. I'm thinking of starting on not this coming Tuesday, but the following one. I will post the dates and the times and the contact information. So if you are struggling with anxiety and depression, or you know someone who is, I have a lot of empathy for you. But there are ways that we can help each other learn and explore and take this energy and see what it has to teach us. We don't need to fear anxiety and depression. We don't need to shun them, repress them, or let them rule our lives. There are incredible energies that we can incorporate in and have them become part of our well-being in a way that can transform our lives. I certainly found that happened to me. 45 years ago when I went to that silent retreat. It's been a journey of transformation, and it's still going on. And it's pretty exciting. So welcome, and I hope you can join us.